Words are easy to speak. They come quickly, often without effort, flowing from thoughts we barely pause to examine. In moments of anger, excitement, or carelessness, we say things we don't fully mean, yet they leave a lasting impact. Because once spoken, words cannot be taken back. They travel farther than we expect, settle deeper than we intend, and stay longer than we realize. A single sentence can build someone's confidence, or quietly break it. A careless remark can damage a relationship that took years to build. And often, the person speaking doesn't even notice the weight of what they've said, until it's too late. Most people don't struggle with speaking. They struggle with pausing. This is a story about that pause, a moment between thought and speech where awareness lives, where you choose whether your words will heal or hurt, build or break, connect or divide. Because true strength is not in saying everything you think. It is in knowing what deserves to be said. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Spoke Without Thinking. In a lively village filled with constant chatter, laughter, and shared stories, lived a boy named Arjun. He was known by everyone, not because of any great achievement, but because of his words. Arjun spoke quickly. Whatever came to his mind, he said it, without pause, without filter, without thinking about what might follow. At first, people enjoyed his company. He was witty, spontaneous, and often funny. His jokes made people laugh, and his boldness made him stand out. He could turn any ordinary moment into something entertaining. "You never hold back," his friends would say. And Arjun took pride in that. To him, speaking freely meant being confident, honest, real. "If it's in my mind, why not say it?" He would often shrug, but slowly something began to change. His words, though unfiltered, were not always harmless. A joke here, a comment there, a careless remark spoken in the heat of the moment. At first, people laughed along. Then they started reacting differently. Some smiles became forced. Some conversations became shorter. Some people simply chose to stay quiet around him. But Arjun didn't notice. Or perhaps he didn't want to. One afternoon, while sitting with a group of friends, someone shared an idea, simple but meaningful to them. Before they could even finish, Arjun interrupted. "That won't work," he said casually. "You're overthinking something so basic." The group fell silent for a moment. The person who had been speaking nodded slowly, forcing a small smile. "Yeah, maybe," they said. The conversation moved on, but something had shifted. Later that day, Arjun passed by two of his friends talking. As he approached, their conversation stopped abruptly. "Hey," he said, unaware. "Hey," they replied, but their tone felt different, guarded. Arjun frowned slightly but brushed it off. "It's nothing," he told himself. But these moments began to repeat. Small changes, subtle distances, not loud enough to confront, but clear enough to feel. At home, things were no different. One evening, his younger sister excitedly showed him a drawing she had spent hours working on. "Look what I made," she said, her eyes bright with hope. Arjun glanced at it briefly and replied without thinking, "The proportions are off. You should practice more." The excitement on her face faded instantly. "Oh, okay," she said quietly, lowering the paper. Arjun didn't notice the change. To him, he had just been honest. But what he didn't understand was this. Honesty without awareness can still hurt. That night, as he lay in bed, something unusual happened. His mind replayed the day. Not the jokes, not the laughter, but the silence that followed his words. The forced smiles, the quiet reactions. For a moment, a thought crossed his mind. Did I say something wrong? He turned on his side, dismissing it quickly. "I didn't mean anything bad," he whispered, and that was true. He didn't mean to hurt anyone, but meaning and impact are not always the same. The next day, the pattern continued. Quick words, careless comments, unfiltered reactions, until something inside him began to feel slightly off. Not enough to stop him, but enough to create a quiet discomfort he couldn't fully explain. It wasn't obvious, it wasn't loud, but it was there, a subtle realization waiting to grow. That speaking freely is easy, but speaking wisely is something else entirely. And Arjun was about to learn the difference. Chapter 2. The day words broke something. The day began like any other, simple, ordinary, and unnoticed. The sun rose over the village. People went about their routines, and Arjun stepped out with the same confidence he carried every day. Nothing felt different, nothing warned him, and yet by the end of that day, something important would change. Arjun met Ravi near the old banyan tree, where they often spent time together. Ravi was not just a friend. He was someone who had always been there, quiet, thoughtful, patient in ways Arjun never tried to understand. That morning, Ravi seemed a little more focused than usual. He was working on a small task, carefully planning something he had been thinking about for days. "I think this might actually work," Ravi said, explaining his idea with quiet excitement. Arjun listened, but not fully. His mind was already forming a response before Ravi had even finished. And when Ravi paused, expecting a reaction, Arjun laughed, not loudly, not harshly, just casually. "You always mess things up," he said. "I don't know how you manage anything." The words slipped out easily. No pause, no thought, just habit. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then everything changed. Ravi's expression shifted, subtly, but enough to notice if someone was paying attention. The light in his eyes dimmed. His posture stiffened slightly. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He didn't even react the way Arjun expected. He simply went quiet. "I was just joking," Arjun added quickly, sensing the shift but not understanding it. Ravi nodded faintly. "Yeah," he said, "I know." But his voice was different, calmer, heavier, and without another word, he stood up. "I'll finish this later," he said, and walked away. Arjun sat there for a moment, confused. "What was that about?" he muttered. To him, nothing unusual had happened. It was just another comment, just another joke, just another moment. But for Ravi, it wasn't, because sometimes the words we say casually are the ones that stay the longest. The rest of the day felt slightly off. When Arjun tried to talk to Ravi later, he received short responses. No conversation, no laughter, just distance. At first, Arjun felt irritated. "Why is he overreacting?" he said to himself. But as the hours passed, that irritation slowly turned into something else. Unease, he replayed the moment in his mind. The words, the silence, the way Ravi had looked at him. For the first time, Arjun didn't just remember what he said. He noticed how it might have felt. That evening, the weight of the moment followed him home. He sat alone, unusually quiet, his thoughts returning again and again to the same question. "Did I go too far?" He tried to justify it. "I didn't mean it. It was just a joke. That's how we always talk." But something inside him didn't agree, because deep down he knew not every joke feels like a joke to the person hearing it. The next day, Ravi didn't show up at their usual spot, nor the day after. The absence felt louder than any argument, and that's when it truly hit Arjun. Words don't just disappear after they are spoken. They stay, they settle, they echo, and sometimes they create distance where there was once closeness. Arjun stood near the banyan tree, looking at the empty space where Ravi used to sit. For the first time in his life, he wished he could take his words back. But he couldn't, because once words leave you, they no longer belong to you. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by nothing but his own thoughts, Arjun realized something he had never understood before. Speaking without thinking doesn't just reveal who you are. It can change how others see you, and more importantly, how they feel around you. Chapter 3, The Old Teacher's Lesson. The silence between Arjun and Ravi did not break. Days passed, but the space between them only grew. What once felt natural, conversations, laughter, shared time, now felt distant and uncertain. Arjun tried to act normal at first. "He'll come around," he told himself. But deep down, he knew something had changed. And for the first time, he couldn't fix it with another joke, or cover it with another careless sentence. One evening, unable to ignore the weight in his chest any longer, Arjun walked toward the edge of the village. There, under the shade of an old tree, lived a teacher known not for strict lessons, but for quiet wisdom. People didn't go to him for answers. They went to him when they were ready to understand. Arjun approached slowly. The old teacher was seated on the ground, arranging small objects with calm focus. Stones, leaves, and pieces of thread laid out in careful patterns. "You seem troubled," the teacher said without looking up. Arjun hesitated. "I didn't mean to hurt him," he said finally, "but I did." The teacher looked up now, his eyes steady but kind. "What did you say?" he asked. Arjun repeated his words. The same sentence that once felt harmless now sounded heavier as he spoke it aloud. The teacher listened quietly. Then, without responding, he stood up and walked inside his small hut. When he returned, he held a cloth bag in his hands. "Take this," he said, handing it to Arjun. Arjun opened it and looked inside. Feathers, light, soft, dozens of them. "Go to the center of the village," the teacher said, "and release them into the air." Arjun frowned, confused. "What will that do?" he asked. "Just do it," the teacher replied calmly. Though puzzled, Arjun followed the instruction. He walked to the busiest part of the village and stood in the open space. People passed by, going about their day, unaware of what he was about to do. He reached into the bag and tossed the feathers into the air. They rose briefly, then scattered in every direction. Some floated gently downward. Others were carried by the wind, over rooftops, down narrow streets, disappearing into places he couldn't see. Within seconds, they were gone. Arjun stood there, watching the empty air where they had once been. Then he returned to the teacher. "It's done," he said. The teacher nodded. "Now," he said, "go collect every feather." Arjun blinked in disbelief. "That's impossible," he said. "They're everywhere. I don't even know where they went." The teacher's expression remained calm. "Exactly," he said. Silence filled the space between them. Arjun felt the meaning before the words were spoken. "Your words are like those feathers." The teacher continued. "Once released, they cannot be gathered again." Arjun lowered his gaze. He thought about Ravi, about the moment, about how easily those words had left his mouth, and how impossible it now felt to undo them. "I didn't think they would matter that much," Arjun said quietly. The teacher picked up a single feather that had remained near his feet. "It is not the weight of the word," he said, "but where it lands." Arjun looked up slowly. A word spoken in carelessness can land in someone's heart and stay there. You may forget it, but they might carry it for a long time. The truth of it settled heavily within him. For the first time, Arjun understood that speaking was not just about expression. It was about responsibility. "But what can I do now?" Arjun asked. "I can't take it back." The teacher nodded. "No," he said, "you cannot take it back." A pause. "But you can choose what you speak next." Arjun stood still, absorbing every word. "Before you speak," the teacher continued, "there is a moment, a small, almost invisible moment. Most people ignore it." "What moment?" Arjun asked. "The pause," the teacher said. Arjun frowned slightly. "That pause is where wisdom lives," the teacher explained. "It is where you decide whether your words will build or break." Arjun thought about how quickly he spoke, how he never paused, how his words always came before his awareness. "I've never noticed it," he admitted. The teacher smiled faintly. "Because you've never looked for it." Silence followed, but this time it was not uncomfortable. It was reflective. Arjun looked down at his hands, remembering the feathers scattering into the wind. "I understand now," he said softly. The teacher shook his head gently. "You've begun to understand," he corrected. There was a difference. Understanding was a moment. Wisdom was a practice. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ground, Arjun stood up. "Thank you," he said. The teacher nodded. "Remember," he added, "words are easy to release, but difficult to repair." Arjun turned to leave, then paused. For the first time, he noticed it. That small moment before he spoke. That quiet space. That pause. And in that moment, he realized he had been given something far more valuable than advice. He had been given awareness. And from that day forward, every word he spoke would pass through that pause. Or at least he would try. Because now he knew. The difference between careless words and meaningful ones is just a moment of thought. Chapter 4. The Pause Before Words. The lesson stayed with Arjun. Not loudly, not as a constant reminder, but quietly, like something waiting to be used. The next morning, as he stepped into his day, nothing around him had changed. The village was the same, the people were the same. But inside him, something was different. For the first time, he was aware of something he had always ignored. The moment before he spoke, at first it felt unnatural. His thoughts still came quickly. Words still rushed forward, ready to escape just as they always had. But now, instead of letting them out instantly, he tried to hold them back, just for a second, just long enough to notice. That pause felt uncomfortable, like stopping in the middle. He had followed his entire life. Later that day, Arjun sat with a group of friends. The conversation was light, filled with jokes and casual remarks. At one point, someone shared an opinion that Arjun immediately disagreed with. The old habit reacted instantly. "That makes no sense." The words reached his lips, and then he paused. It was brief, almost invisible, but it was there. In that small space, something new happened. He thought, "Is this necessary?" The question surprised him. He had never asked it before. He looked at his friend, who was still speaking, unaware of what Arjun was about to say. For a moment, Arjun considered continuing his sentence. But then he chose differently. Instead of interrupting, he let his friend finish. And when he finally spoke, his tone had changed. "I see what you mean," he said calmly. "But what if we try it this way instead?" The reaction was immediate, but different. There was no silence, no discomfort, just conversation. Arjun noticed it, not just in others, but within himself. That one pause had changed everything about what he said. As the day went on, he began to see more moments like this. Small opportunities, tiny decisions. While walking through the market, someone accidentally bumped into him. The impact was light, but his reaction rose instantly. "Watch where you're—" Pause. He stopped himself. The words hung unspoken. He looked at the person, an older man, clearly distracted, already apologizing. "I'm sorry," the man said. Arjun took a breath. "It's okay," he replied. The situation ended there. No conflict, no tension, just calm. Arjun walked away surprised, not because the moment was significant, but because his reaction had been different, controlled, chosen. That evening, he sat alone thinking about his day. Nothing extraordinary had happened. No big achievements, no dramatic changes. And yet, everything felt different, because for the first time, his words were no longer automatic. They were intentional. The next challenge came sooner than expected. A few days later, Arjun saw Ravi again. It wasn't planned. It wasn't prepared. Ravi was standing near the well, drawing water quietly. Arjun felt a sudden rush of thoughts. Say something. Explain. Defend yourself. Apologize. All at once the words crowded his mind, pushing forward, ready to spill out just as they always had. His heart beat faster. This moment mattered, and for the first time, he didn't rush it. He paused. Longer this time, long enough to feel the weight of what he was about to say. Long enough to realize this wasn't just about speaking. It was about choosing the right words. Arjun walked closer. Ravi looked up briefly, then looked away. The distance between them was still there, and Arjun knew one careless sentence could make it worse. He took a breath, let the silence sit for a moment, then spoke. "I've been wanting to talk to you," he said. His voice was calm, slower than usual, more careful. Ravi didn't respond immediately, but he didn't walk away either. That was enough. Arjun continued. "I didn't think before I spoke that day," he said, "and I understand now that what I said hurt you." The words felt different as they left him. Not rushed, not careless, chosen. Ravi remained quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slightly. "It did," he said. There was no anger in his voice, just honesty. Arjun didn't interrupt, didn't defend, didn't explain. He listened, and that, more than anything, showed the change within him. Because sometimes, the most powerful use of words is knowing when not to use them. The silence between them no longer felt heavy. It felt open, not fully healed, but no longer broken. As Arjun walked away later that evening, he realized something important. The pause wasn't just about stopping words. It was about understanding them, shaping them, respecting their impact. And in that small space between thought and speech, he had found something he never had before. Control, not over others, but over himself. And that changed everything. Chapter 5. Words that build, not break. The change in Arjun was not loud. No one announced it. No one pointed it out immediately. But slowly, people began to feel it. The boy who once spoke without thinking had become someone who chose his words carefully. Not silent, not withdrawn, just aware. His conversations became calmer. His presence more comfortable. People who once hesitated to speak around him now found themselves opening up again, because they no longer feared his words. They trusted them, but the true test of his change did not come in everyday conversations. It came in moments that mattered. Days after their brief encounter near the well, Arjun saw Ravi again, this time sitting alone under the banyan tree, the same place where everything had shifted. Arjun stopped. For a moment, the old habit tried to return. Say something quickly, break the silence, fix it fast. But he didn't move immediately. He paused, not out of hesitation, but out of awareness. He walked slowly toward Ravi and sat down beside him. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable this time. It was steady, real. Arjun took a breath. "I've been thinking about what I said," he began. His voice was calm, measured, not rushed. "I spoke without thinking, and I hurt you." The words felt heavier than anything he had said before, because this time he understood them. Ravi didn't respond immediately. He looked down at the ground, as if weighing the moment. Arjun didn't interrupt, didn't rush to fill the silence. He let it stay. "That was new." "That's not the first time," Ravi said quietly. The words were not harsh, but they were honest, and Arjun felt them. Before, he might have reacted, defended himself, explained, turned the moment into something lighter. But now, he listened. "You've said things like that before," Ravi continued. "Maybe as a joke, maybe without meaning it, but it doesn't feel like a joke when you hear it again and again." Arjun nodded slowly. Every word Ravi spoke felt like a reflection of the past he hadn't noticed before. "I didn't realize," Arjun said. "I know," Ravi replied. "That's why it hurt more." Silence followed again, but this silence was different. It wasn't distance, it was understanding. "I'm sorry," Arjun said, this time more softly, not as a quick apology, but as something real. "I can't take back what I said," he continued, "but I'm trying to change how I speak." Ravi looked at him, not fully convinced, but not closed either. "That matters," Ravi said after a moment. "It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was a step, And Arjun knew, some things take time to rebuild. Trust, comfort, connection. They don't return instantly. Just like words cannot be taken back instantly, but they can be balanced over time. With better ones, from that day forward, Arjun didn't just practice pausing, he practiced speaking with intention. When someone shared something important, he listened fully before responding. When he disagreed, he spoke with respect instead of dismissal. When humor came, he chose it carefully, making sure it didn't come at the cost of someone else's feelings. And sometimes, he chose silence, not because he had nothing to say, but because not everything needed to be said. Over time, the change became undeniable. People noticed, not in what he said, but in how they felt around him, safe, heard, respected. And that was something his old words had never created. One evening, as he sat quietly, reflecting on the journey he had taken, Arjun realized something simple, yet powerful. Words are not just sounds. They are actions. They can build trust, or break it. They can heal, or leave unseen wounds. And the difference between the two is a moment of thought, a pause, a choice. He smiled faintly, remembering the feathers carried by the wind. He couldn't gather the ones he had released in the past, but he could choose what he released next. And that choice was where his true strength lay. Think before you speak, because your words can either build bridges or create distances that are hard to cross. The next time you're about to speak, pause, just for a moment, because in that small moment you hold power. The power to choose words that build instead of break, that heal instead of hurt, that bring people closer instead of pushing them away. Most people speak without thinking, but you don't have to be like most people. Be the one who listens, be the one who understands, be the one whose words carry respect, not regret. If this story made you reflect, don't just move on, take action. Like this video, comment, "I will think before I speak," and subscribe for more stories that help you grow stronger from within. Remember, you can't take back the words you've already spoken, but you can choose the ones you speak next, and that choice can change everything.